Welcome, Robin, and thank you for being our passenger profile this month. I'm really, really excited to have you on the show.
Thanks
Um,
for having me. I'm super flattered to be asked. I really
well,
love Taxi, and um, I was very happy when you reached out to me.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited to have you here. But before we get into the interview, I want to give the audience a short summary of your amazing career, just mind blowing. So, Robin is a native of Los Angeles, and she's already had a serious career as a film and TV producer, where she's held executive jobs at top production companies, including, and get ready for this, working as head of development for legendary producer Kathleen Kennedy, who's the CEO of Lucasfilm and one of the most successful producers of all time, with films like E.T., the Jurassic Park franchise, several of the Indiana Jones films, Munich, and dozens of other blockbuster. I mean, literally not just known films, but big, big summer blockbusters. She's worked with the likes of Steven Spielberg a lot, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese, Robert Zemeckis, Barry Levinson, and Clint Eastwood. And all that is to say that Robin, as the head of development for Ms. Kennedy, had a job that literally I think people would cut off a finger, maybe even an arm, to have that opportunity. And you've held those jobs, which is really awesome. Robin also held executive positions at Disney and Lionsgate Studios, where she worked on films including The Sixth Sense and many more. She's also head of production for River Road Entertainment, where they produced Sean Penn's critically acclaimed film Into the Wild, as well as Food Inc., which is awesome. I've seen it. The groundbreaking documentary about the agribusiness, for which Robin won 2 Emmy Awards. Congratulations for that. But Robin started feeling what she describes, I love this term, a crisis of mojo, working with film, a feeling which became impossible for her to ignore when she read the seminal book, The Alchemist, which made her absolutely certain that she never had really found her true calling. So after many tortured months of total confusion, she had a eureka moment in which she realized that she wanted to write songs. Wow, I can't believe that she gave up, or you gave up all that to write songs. But once Robin discovered that passion, she pursued it with a fervor and gratitude, first learning her craft in the wonderful world of country music. That organically led to her discovering the film and TV music sync world. Robin began writing in many genres with many different kinds of artists to create an ever-growing catalog of songs for licensing. And after a total career pivot, suddenly her old world now dovetailed with her new world perfectly. Her songs are rep by some of the top music licensing companies, and they've been used in TV commercials for Coke, Samsung, Clorox, United Healthcare, Nordstrom's, Bose, Lowe's, they rhyme, with placements on Netflix, HBO, ABC, and Hulu, just to name a few. Wow, what a story and what a life that you've lived. My mind is blown. I'm so
Thank you for
impressed.
saying that. You're making me feel like I've lived a cool life. I
You
often
did.
don't feel that way, so I appreciate it.
Wow, I can't
Um,
believe you don't feel that way. Maybe you're like super humble, but I mean, even not from an egotistical standpoint, but just to having, been around those people and learn the craft, because it is a craft working in that industry, different from the craft you now know in this industry. But I want to start like I always do, which of course is the beginning. So, did you grow up in a musical family?
I wish I did. And it's funny because so many of the wonderful people I've met in music, it seems like everybody has, or a lot, most people, like their dad played guitar or whatever. No, I mean, my father loved Sinatra and he would play him all the time. And so I have a deep love of Frank Sinatra, who is the greatest singer ever. But really, no, they used to play a lot of that sort of late 60s folk pop around the house, sort of birds kind of music, and like the Zombies and leading into British Invasion, but more that Peter, Paul, and Mary kind of stuff, which I, have a deep weakness for. And I think our, my band or my duo, Blonde and Carr, I feel like we have a lot of that sound in us. And I think it goes right back to there. But no, none of them ever, I don't think either of them can carry a tune. Not at all. Very little music around the house. I have an older sister, and she and I were always super into music like any kids, but not from my parents.
Um,
And they insisted that we learn an instrument in that Tiger Mom kind of way. And my sister was a bad cellist, and I did classical piano. And I kept going until I was in 10th grade. I had a pretty hardcore teacher who made the whole thing very tense. I realized every Monday I had a stomach ache for most of my growing up because I was nervous about this woman. But I'm grateful because I'm learning guitar now, and her rigor about technique and also taking ballet growing up, you kind of learn that with certain art forms, there's a level of technique that you want if you want to do well. So I kind of am grateful for that. And I love classical music, I think, coming from that experience. But no, not a lot of music. And my parents didn't play piano or anything. They just wanted us to learn instruments.
All right, so you were more of a consumer, and I get it. And did you, at what point in your life, if ever before now, did you ever attempt to write any songs or anything? Have any interest in making music, or just strictly a consumer?
I love music so much. I honestly, I've heard recently about these people that are called super tasters, where if you like put a cherry in their mouth, it explodes with flavor more than for a normal person. I think my ability to love music is big. Like I love it so much. It transports me. It's everything to me. It always has been. It makes me weep. I love it. And I think because I feel so strongly about it, and because I was always into indie rock music, that I just never felt it was like saying I want to be God. I mean, seriously, not at all less than that. Like, do you think you're Kurt Cobain? I don't. So if you don't think you're Kurt Cobain, you should not be making music. You should be worshiping Kurt, and you should be listening to that and knowing every word and knowing everything about that artist. So that's the way I always saw it. The idea of making music was like it's like a hubris. I couldn't even have I couldn't have fathomed that. So I was always a fan. And in fact, so much that I like growing up, or in terms of like when you're starting to think about your professional life. For one thing, my family is super academically oriented, so I always was supposed to do that kind of more thinky kind of established job. But also I never wanted to work for a record company or do any of that music business stuff. I worked in radio stations when I was in college, and it was my passion, and I loved radio. But you could get those sort of junior like record company kind of rep kind of jobs, and I always felt
Right.
like those were the people that like complained about going to shows. I was always the person in the front row getting trampled and staying up all night to like I didn't want to ever like turn it into, I don't even know why. It wasn't even like a decision I made. It just, I never saw it as something that I was supposed to try and turn into a profession in any way at all. It was,
So, but when you had this crisis of mojo, with all that said, what made you turn to music, and even more so, country music, which is the impossibly high ladder of writing a hit in country, as you now know? What made you choose that path?
well, everything for me has been sort of a long and winding road, to quote the Beatles. You know, I mean, even my path in film, because I was supposed to be, like a lawyer or something like that. So even wanting to work at all in the arts was like a huge, difficult set of decisions. But when I worked in film all that time, you know, I loved parts of it. I loved working with writers. I loved working on story. My strong suit was always I had good taste. I was always good at spotting a distinctive director, writer, book, story. I was good at finding cool stuff and making it good. But there was so much about the job that I never felt I was really amazing at it all. In fact, I always thought I was sort of at best a B plus at that job. And, working in film as I did for a long time, you grow up with a bunch of your cronies. You start as assistants, and then you work your way up, and you get your beginning executive job, et cetera. And you work up until your friends are either running studios or have quit the business or are a producer or something. And I would look around and I knew so many people that were my peers that I thought, they're made for it. They are made. This guy who lives and breathes it. They love it on set. They have that impresario nature. They understand the producer's job really well. They were just, understood it deeply, like didn't have to wonder, like, I'm on set and I'm going, should I kind of don't know why they're playing this scene that humorously. I think it's a serious scene. Do I say something to the director or do I not? They would have an innate judgment about how to handle themselves in their role on set that I never had. And I always felt like, this is really not, I mean, like I'm good at parts of this. I'm not an A at this, and I'm certainly not an A plus. And it bothered me. And it bothered me because I could see it in others. And so film got worse and worse and worse.
But why country music of all things?
Okay, so one day when I had this crisis of mojo, I was reading The Alchemist. It's all about finding your personal legend with an E at the end. I think it's capital P, capital L, and legend is with an E at the end. That's how important it is. And if you don't find your purpose in life, you're going to go to your death a coward. And I'm like, I'd read some of this and I would just cry and I would just say, yeah, that's me. I'm going to go to my death a coward. I love music more than anything. There's no place for me in it. I don't understand it. And I meditated and I did everything. And I finally thought, you know what? I just want to learn guitar. Like when I was growing up, all my friends learned pop songs on guitar and I never got to. I was always doing Bach inventions. I want to learn guitar. So I started taking guitar lessons at McCabe's. And when you're musical at all and you learn guitar, you learn 3 chords and all of a sudden you're sounding out Because the Night by Springsteen and Patti Smith, and you're like, oh my God, I'm a genius. And I'm hearing songs going around in my head and I think they're incredibly beautiful. And I just like, what is going on? And I couldn't sleep. And then during this time when I'm having this moment of like feeling like there's this music just taking over my brain, I was driving in my car on Olympic, listening to country radio, and I had this moment, this light bulb moment. And I thought, oh my God, holy cow, these people don't write their own songs. I could write songs for country artists. I don't have to be a performer. I don't have to worry about whether I'm beautiful enough or any of that stuff. I can just write songs. They have verses, they have melodies, they have words that are good. And that's what I'm going to do. And I came home and I called my mother. And I said, I know what I'm doing with the rest of my life. And the funny thing is that when I'm dialing my mother, I had this little voice in my head go, because I realized I was telling this story to someone recently, and I realized, oh my God, I hadn't written one song. I've not written one song. And I'm calling my mother and saying, I'm like packing up my everything, and this is me. And I thought, and I'm punching in her number, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, Robin, like, A, you have no idea if you're any good at this. And B, what if you don't love this as much as you think you're going to? And I just thought, screw that. Like 100%, I know what I'm doing. I found it. Like I knew I found it. I found it. And so that was just before 2017. And so that started me in country. And it was an amazing place to start because country's the hardest.
Yep.
The most rigorous writing. Like I'm supposed to be a good lyricist in the world of sync and pop and indie or wherever. And I think I am a good lyricist in country. I'm like, oh my God, those people slay. Like they are.
Oh, they're at a level of lyric craft that you have to spend 5 to 10 years living and breathing it in Nashville before you can even enter the arena. They're the best.
They're just gorgeous. And I was listening to New Music Friday, and there's this new Luke Bryan song. I mean, it's just so good. It's so good that writing. But I'm not a Southern girl. I'm a Jewish girl from LA, and I think also I'm limited about my level of understanding of that world. And it's so much guys. As much as we know the artists are 90% guys, the writers are 90% guys. I think still, I mean, I've been out of that world for a couple of years now, but I know it's changing and it's getting better, but I don't know if it's changed all that much. And so anyway, there's a lot of reasons I got out of country, but I'm super glad I started there. And it was a great place to start because also in terms of a path, like it got me on a great path because there's that thing in country where they say if you haven't written 100 songs, you're not a writer. Don't call yourself a writer until you've written 100 songs, which is actually in writing circles, not that many, but when you're starting 100 songs is a lot. And so the minute I started and I learned that, it was like, okay, write 100 songs. That's your job, write 100 songs. And to this day, when I'm writing for Blonde and Carr, which is my project, my personal project, or when I'm writing with people for Sync, I do think that there's something very amazing and intangible that happens when you write a lot. And it teaches you things that are really probably not even quantifiable in words. You understand something about songwriting from writing a lot. There's this
Of
songwriting
course.
magical thing that comes from within if you let it be open. And knowing when it's good enough, knowing when there's a melody that you go, oh, that's the one, let's stay there. Or knowing when there's the subject, that it's something about knowing when it's a song comes from writing a lot of songs. And I always pull from that. So yeah, for the first, anyway,
Yeah.
I started in 2017 and I wrote country for the first year and a half and then magically segued into sync.
What was the impetus? What was the moment, the thing that made you go, I'm going to shift to sync and do like indie pop stuff? I mean, that's a pretty big chasm between the two.
It was genius. And I'll say one thing, like I'm a pretty driven person and I'm a hard worker. And if I'm doing something, I guess I'm just sort of made that way. I really want to do it. I want to do my best. And work hard. And it's funny, my husband always says, like, God, in film, everything you ever got, every job, every green light, everything you got because you just grinded it out. And it's true that it's a very expensive medium. So if you're trying to make a movie, it's going to be millions of dollars. So yeah, of course you should be grinding it out, I guess. But in music, these doors, sort of have like organically opened. And I don't know if that's because it's what I'm meant to do. It's certainly not an easy field, but for me, the right things have happened at the right time. And so when I was immersed in doing country, trying to write my 100 songs, trying to write with my best co-writers every day, Zooming, trying to go to Nashville as much as possible, trying to learn guitar so I could play out, all of these things that I felt were the important jobs of trying to understand that world. Every once in a while, because I'm a planner and a producing type brain, I would kind of go like, what's the path here? Like I would sort of look around the corner of that little, this is my daily job, to going, so how am I ever going to succeed in this? And I couldn't really see a path, but I would say, don't even think about it. You have to write 100 songs. That's your job. But then in the middle of, I think I was on song like 45, when I went out to dinner with an old friend of mine from film. And he said, so what do you even do all day? Like he doesn't get it. And I played him a song that was the closest to a pop song I'd ever written, which at that time. And he goes, well, then write me a Coldplay song, because I was up all night trying to find a replacement for Fix You by Coldplay. It costs $250,000. We have this Jake Gyllenhaal movie. I can't afford that. I'm trying to find a more affordable song for that. I always need that song, the song that goes from vulnerable to triumphant, that's about that BPM, that kind of yearning falsetto male voice. It's not just me who always needs that. Other people always need it. If you write 5 songs that have that vibe, that roughly that beats per minute, you will find a place for them. And I was in the middle of trying to understand how to write for country males, a person who's never gone fishing or owned a gun or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, write a Coldplay song? Are you kidding me? Like I felt like I died and went to heaven. And so I was writing the next day with this woman who had done a little bit more sync already than me. And I said, change of plans. We're not writing a country song. Let's do this, try and write something that's in the vein of Fix You. And we wrote a really nice song. And we found a producer. We produced it out. By the time we finished, it was too late for that one job, but she submitted it to a company she'd been working with, and they placed it on Teen Mom 2 not long after. And that was the very first song I wrote for Sync. And that was the song that actually won the Hawaii Songwriting Expo. It's called I'll Still Be Here. And that got a lot of syncs. And
Who was your co-writer?
Shani Rose is her name.
Oh, okay.
Producer is Jacob Badurecci I pronounced that poorly, Jacob Federecci, and Jacob is the producer I work with the most frequently, and I love him. And I met him on that song, and that and that was the day that changed everything. And it was like I no longer have to try and figure out a path for myself in country. I could do this. So then I very quickly started to learn about that field. And what it seemed to me was the way to go is the more you could accumulate very, very good songs in a range of genres that cover commonly needed kinds of moods that you can control, that can be one stop, which for people who follow taxi know that means that it's not really involved with a company.
Right.
Anyway, so that they're easy to clear and affordable and sound like as good as something on the radio. The more I could have a repertoire of amazing songs like that, the more I could find places that would want to use them. And that became my path. And that was about 2.5 years ago. And
Wow.
I have had the funnest time. So I get to write in R&B, in even hip hop a little, slow jams, indie pop, a lot of pop.
Here's the amazing thing about all this to me is that in country, as you well know, country lyric craft is very detail oriented, visual details. I walked into the room. What did it smell like? How dim was the light? Did the door squeak when I walked into the room? All those visual details build a story, and country songs are largely built on stories. Whereas music that works in sync is the complete antithesis of that because the story's already being told with the script, the actors, and what's going on in the scene. Was it hard for you to adapt, to leave the story behind and talk about big, gross, and I don't mean gross like, ooh, gross me out. I mean gross like macro thoughts like, shake it up, shout it out, things that work well, especially now in TV commercials. I'm talking because you've had a fair number of placements in commercials. Was it hard to transition from lots of details to big ideas?
Yeah, no, it's funny because having spent all those years in film, you would think that the way that would benefit me is the relationships, that I can reach out to all these people that I knew. And when I first started doing this, I would spend like 3 hours a day on reaching out, and it resulted in nothing, zero, like nothing, which is kind of cool because it didn't end up mattering. But where I do think it mattered is the storytelling. I think that there's something about, maybe because we did put songs, but also like I was working on story for all those years. And I think that you could say that country writing is very specific, and it is, and everything you're saying about the details, the smell, and all the furniture, as they call it.
Right.
But I would argue that the big, messy, blurry world of sync is also quite specific. It's specific in a completely different way. It's specific emotionally. So I'm feeling excited about today is super different than I'm inspired. Those are both upbeat. They're both kind of, generically, like you could call them happy,
Yeah.
positive songs, but like I I believe in something. I believe in something. Today I feel I have faith in the world is really different than I'm having a great day today. It's a really different upbeat thing than I love my life. It's a really different thing from I'm feeling at peace and really good about it. Like it's good vibes and it's Saturday morning and I feel good about today. I feel, and when I write with people, I feel like there are notes that take me away from the very big, blurry, specific mood. Like if we're writing, I'm on top of the world right now. I'm driving down the coast highway, and today is everything the world can be. Well, there are notes that harsh that mellow for me, and there
Right.
are words that are like I don't want to hear about you. I don't want. Everyone's always mad at me because I'm like I don't want to hear the word you, and like this song should have no use. I don't want any you. I don't want even any me necessarily. I want it to be about the world. Or they're just ways that I feel like somehow I get in a zone that's about the storytelling part of it, And if there's anything, and I don't know for sure this is why it's gone well, but I even feel like, I write a lot with Callie J, the queen of taxi, and like, she's a star and an incredible writer and singer and rapper and go-getter and all around amazing person. And we get a lot of commercials together with Jacob Federacci also. And even in the songs we do with her, which could be considered swagger, but
Mhm.
there's ones that are like, there are different degrees of things, and I think they work differently for different kinds of ads. So I would say that it's specific in its own way, and the more you can think about the real story you're trying to tell with that song, how does it really specifically make you feel? Not just good, but like, does
So
it
you're
make
saying to take those, not just an expression of like, I'm having a great day, but you dig deeper for the emotion of why you're having the great day? Is that a summary of what you're?
yeah, and even like to try to put as fine a point on it as you can, and if you can even think about what the visual would be, like there's like, um I don't know, somehow my mind goes into pictures too. Like I think about what I'd be looking at if that song were playing. And would I be looking at a girl walking down the street strutting her amazing shoes? Or would I be looking at a guy driving a car going, I'm feeling really cool about myself right now? Or would I be thinking that I'm at Lowe's in a lumber yard thinking my house is going to look really nice if I do this? Or is it back to school and I'm feeling like things are about to start? There's just like lots of little ways that I think my brain goes into a place and I feel like I understand the vibe of the song and I understand what we're deviating off it.
You
And
know, I love reading marketing books. I've read 800 plus marketing books. And one of the things that's come up in hundreds of them is somebody who needs a quarter-inch drill doesn't need the drill. It's the hole the drill makes. And then why do you need the hole? It's because you're going to mount a shelf over your mantle of your fireplace, and it's going to make the room look good, and you're going to feel really good about your home. So that's the essence of
I love
that's what you're talking
that
about.
person. So if you're thinking about someone who's buying that, they're thinking about, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to do something wonderful today that's going to that's going to adorn my house. And so there's something about that spirit. I mean, there was a lot of, it was interesting during COVID because at first everyone was saying that they wanted these, we're in it together kind of slightly sorrowful songs. And very quickly, no one wanted that. And what they wanted was like, together we're going to do this, and much more of that, like, let's get up. And it couldn't be too, like, talk about a delicate and specific kind of story to tell. It wasn't, we're kings of the universe at all. It had a tenderness, but it was about,
Through this together.
yeah, and a certain optimism about how we're not gonna we can do this, but mindful about the fact that it was a hard time. So there were a lot of, there, it is specific in its own beautiful way, I think. And one thing I want to say too is, because like sometimes people are a little snooty about music that has this other use and sync music, and I don't feel that way about it at all. And I feel that every time we try to write something that we think is as amazing as we can. And maybe because I have not written 10,000 songs, I've been doing this not a long time. I'm not burnt out. I'm voracious. I would really like to be writing 3 songs a day if anyone will put up with me. Um, but I want them to be each one an expression of something awesome. And you don't always achieve everything you want, but I think that may have also mattered too, because I care a lot about these songs. They're my babies and I love them all. And I think they all should be on the radio. Like, I think they're all as fantastic as they could be in their own different genres. And so I don't, and I sometimes hear stuff where it's like when there was a lot too much of that clappy, happy kind of ukulele kind of stuff, and it starts to sound, you hear chants that seem familiar. And I sort of feel like, God, if I'm a music supervisor and I've heard this kind of thing 100,000 times, I'd glaze. And I feel like maybe because I really try and, throw my heart and soul into every single one of them. I want them all to be awesome.
Do you
And
remember you were in the room with me, I believe, in the ballroom in Hawaii at the Hawaii Songwriters Festival, and I was moderating a listening panel with a couple of music supervisors, maybe an A&R person up there, and your song, I can't remember the name of it, you co-wrote with Callie J, got played, and everybody in the room went, "Okay, that's by far the best song of the day." What was the title of the song?
and that is the song that
What was it again?
called "Look at Me."
Look at me. So when it finished, one of the people on the panel looked at Callie and said, "Great song. You'll remember this moment. Did you write that for sync or did you just write it?" And they were trying to make the point that if you write for sync, we can smell it a mile away. And Callie said, "No, we just wrote it." And now that I'm getting to know you better and know that you guys co-wrote it, I believe her answer. In that moment, I thought she's either sharp enough to give them the answer they were looking for, or she's honest. But I don't know this girl. I didn't know her at all. I didn't know you. And so now I'm feeling like, yeah, the song was written just to be written, not to be written for sync.
And then, in total contradiction of what I just said, the thing that's funny about that song is that it's been used for so many different things. And it's hilarious to me. It's been a Samsung ad where they were launching a new flip phone where it's about this super groovy guy. It's a minute long ad, and the whole ad is the song. And he's just this glamorous dude with his groovy phone, his groovy car, his groovy life. It's been a seduction scene. It's been an action scene. It's been in a lot of commercials. It's been a RuPaul uh, you know, whatever those masterclass things are ad. It's been so many different things. And I think it's just got a groovy sound. And it's funny because we kind of knew it when we wrote it. We were like, this is just a fun song. It's just, and that song has been used a lot for United Healthcare. And it's actually been exclusive to United Healthcare for the whole year 2021. And we have so many people always asking for it. And we haven't been able to license it to anybody else this year because
Uh,
this exclusive deal. But we've really passed on a lot of very cool things. But
well, I
yeah,
hope they paid you well for the exclusive. Randy Bachman is a friend of mine. I've known him for a very long time. He wrote Taking Care of Business. And I remember that he had an exclusive on Taking Care of Business for Office Depot or whatever chain it was. And they paid him a ridiculous amount of money, whether the song got used or not in any given year. And I think that deal went on for years. So exclusives,
song.
yeah, can be very lucrative. When you collaborate, how do you walk into the collaboration, which I understand most of the time is now virtual, but do you show up with top line ideas? Are you primarily a top liner and you go into, let's say you and whoever your co-writer is, you're in on a Zoom like you and I are now, and you say, okay, so here's what I'm bringing to the party today. I've got this cute little thing about blah, 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 and you play it, and then they play one, and then you play one, and you guys land on something that you both feel like you want to work on today. How does the process go?
It happens every which way, and I love it so much. It depends on what we're doing that day. If it's with an artist for an artist project, or if it's something that we're thinking we're going to do for licensing for sync. And it depends who the producer is. Um, I like to come in with ideas, and if it's someone I haven't written with before, particularly, I try to listen to a bunch of their stuff, both the producer and the singer. For sync, I never have been the singer. I always am writing. Um, for my own project, I'm the singer and the writer. Um, but so and particularly if it's people I don't know, I don't really want to feel like I'm not prepared.
Mhm.
So, and if they're an artist, I try and I really get to, what I really like to do is I get to know their voice. And I think about what stories I think are appropriate for that voice. I just wrote recently with a really beautiful singer named Reed Waddle he lives in DC. I've written with him now a couple of times actually, but he's just got a really rich, um, manly voice with a certain amount of grit to it, and I feel like that tells me, I don't feel he's a swaggery voice. His
Mm.
voice says to me, it says to me masculinity, um, strength, um, a kind of an honesty. Um, I like writing um, things that are a bit heartfelt with him. We should try and figure out some rock stuff too, because he would be good for that. And it's always nice to have those kinds of songs. But I like to come in. And one of the things, and I'll give a little plug to Taxi right now, because one of the things I really love about Taxi is the references. And it used to be, I haven't been good about it lately, I will be honest and say this, but it used to be a part of my week on Sunday, every Sunday, that I would save up a bunch of the little email blasts that I would get from Taxi about briefs, about songs that you guys were looking for. And I would listen to a lot of the references because there always were so many artists I'd never heard of.
Mm.
And I would learn a lot from that. And I would learn a lot about all the different kinds of music that people might be wanting. So if they're putting references with people like Kaleo, like artists I'd never heard of, and I will collect those so that when I'm writing with a guy with a manly voice like Reed, I think, oh, I loved that. In fact, there's a producer that I love to death, named Herman Briseño, that I met through Taxi, and we write a lot together. And he's a great singer and a great producer, so we do a lot together. And he can do rock really good. He's a great rock singer, and I'll hear like a great rock reference that's very fun and very modern, um, in Taxi, and I'll save them up. And when I go into those sessions, I'm like, how about this vibe? And we end up with a song often that can sound quite different, but it gets us going. But then a lot of times when you write with a producer, they've got the beginning of a track. And if the artist hears it and likes it, then you go with that. I try when I write with artists, I try to really, because they're the voice. So I
Right.
try and really build around them. I interview them about their mood, and so it sort of evolves. Like I start just scribbling, and I always, one of the things I'm completely devoted to are Google Docs. And the minute we start talking, like we'll chat a bit about how our day is, how our life is, etc., get to know each other if we've never met before. But then I immediately just start blathering anything that they say that's interesting, anything that occurs to me, anything that the track, if we're listening to it, anything that suggests. I I I just throw it all on the page, and it breaks the ice, and it gets us going, and always something gets us started there.
A lot of what you're describing is what you learned working in the film industry, which is casting, which is old school music publishers. They're constantly casting who would this song be good for. So you, as a writer, are analyzing your subject and building a profile or whatever they call it in the film industry, where you're describing in your head the character that you're working with. So you're not just writing any song, you're writing a song for that character, which is really
I love that comment, and it's 100% the case. When I discovered Sync It, I'm like, this is what I'm going to do now. I immediately started hunting for all the different voices, and I'm always and hunting for producers, which has led to a lot of cool stuff for me, because I would work my producers to death. It always takes them a long time to finish these songs, and I wanted to write more and more and more, so I just needed more and more producers. And but like I would fall in love with Latin pop, and I speak some Spanish, but not good enough to write it, not well enough. So I was hunting and hunting and hunting, and then I met Mariela Arredondo, who has now she has her own company, What Up Pitches, but she's a beautiful singer and a great writer. And I started writing Latin pop with her. I'm always hunting for guys. I was writing with too many females, and I would have a lot of different kinds of pop female voices. But I was always looking for guys that could do a range of different things. Yeah, I love it. And producers that can do a range of things.
It's funny. So one of the questions I was going to ask you, I'm going to jump ahead, is that you're not a monogamist, you're a polygamist as far as searching for the producers. And how do you meet them, and how do you know when it's a good fit, and what do you do when it's not?
Hmm. Um, well, how you meet them is you ask everybody. And I go to a lot of expos and things. So I go to Taxi Expo, hunting for producers. That's what I do. I went to the Production Music Association thing, thinking that all these, because that's for composers. and looking for producers. I love Durango Songwriters Expo. I early on used to do all the Nashville Songwriters Association meeting, NSAI, and they have a great chapter here in LA. It's actually Malibu. And I would go to that, hunting for producers. I attend, like when I go to Zooms and people are playing songs, I listen, like what's sounding good, and I'll write to the producer. When I was, honored as a 10 people of the month for Taxi, when I first was starting out, I didn't even know that, I didn't ever see that page before. And I looked at all the other people that were on that page to see if anyone was from LA and if anyone was a good producer. And I met one of my favorite producers through reaching out to one of the other 10. It was a gentleman named Taj Brooks, and his partner is a woman named Rachel West, one of the finest singers I or anybody ever gets to work with. And I have a lot of songs with them. Taj is an incredible producer. She's an incredible singer. They can do anything. And they were laughing. Like when I reached out to them, he had his email on the Taxi thing. And I'm like, hi, I'm Robin. We're on this page together. I'm honored to be on the page with you. Your music sounds amazing. Can we meet up? And we met up and we started writing. And we've written a lot of songs together. I hunt
How many have you written so far?
songs.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, not that many. I mean, it's
Like
funny
more than
because,
100?
oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I probably in somewhere in the 250 zone, I would think. And probably in terms of like songs that are camera ready, amazing songs for sync, I would guess I probably have a repertoire of about 150. It's not a lot, but given the fact that I've only done it a couple of years, before COVID, I was super rigorous about it. Then COVID, slowed things down, sadly. And that's when I started doing Blonde in Car, which is my indie pop music. And that started to take a lot of my time, but that's been very meaningful to me.